What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video here. And today what I wanted to do was take a look at 5 offseason trade options for the New York Jets. Now, spoiler, none of these trades are like going for broke. Like, I'm not giving up 7th overall pick for Matthew Stafford. I'm not trading for a Tyreek Hill or Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp, someone of that ilk. I'm trying to find relatively cheap trade options that are semi-realistic for the New York Jets to fit positions of need. So the first that I want to talk about is Jack Conklin from the Cleveland Browns. Now, way back when, the Jets had interest in signing him when he became available after he left the Tennessee Titans. Instead, he goes to the Cleveland Browns. He's a 2-time All-Pro at right tackle in his career. I thought he responded well after missing a lot of time with injury in 2023. He had a bounce-back 2024 season. And the Cleveland Browns are kind of in a spot where they have their next up-and-coming right tackle available, and Conklin might end up being a cut candidate for the Browns. But if you could throw a late day 3 pick their way, they'll they would be much more willing to trade him off. He has 2 years remaining on his contract with a base salary at $14 million for the next 2 years. He's 31 years old. So he's not nearly as old as what Morgan Moses was last year when the Jets traded for him. And last year, the Jets traded a 4th and 6th round pick and got back a 4th in Morgan Moses. So it was essentially a 6th round pick, and you move down the board in the 4th round. I think you could replicate something similar. And, perhaps Muji does something like this so he could fill the need at right tackle, because the reports have shown that Morgan Moses is more than likely moving on in free agency after this year. Right tackle becomes a massive need. Perhaps the Jets don't want to spend the 7th overall pick on a tackle and instead would like to go a different direction. So they do some sort of day 3 pick swap. You're trading one of your 2 6th round picks, something to that effect. And trying to find your right tackle, at least for the next couple of years, by going that route. Speaking of positions of need, tight end is a massive one, and I have 2 trade targets at the tight end position. The first we'll talk about is Dalton Schultz, another guy that I was interested in bringing in way back when. The Texans can save $9 million and $11.5 million if they trade him this offseason. He has a base salary of $11 million over the next 2 years at 29 years old, so it's not like he's on the wrong side of 30 yet. You would have him for his age 29 and 30 season. He was relatively productive in Houston, not, monster numbers, but 635 yards and 5 touchdowns 2 years ago. This past year really struggled. Offensively, they didn't have the touchdown support with only 2 touchdowns, but still 532 yards. He can line up as a really big slot. I think that makes him an exciting option because that could help mitigate some of the Jets' issues that they have at the wide receiver position. We know that's going to be another position in need for the New York Jets at wide receiver. So maybe they would bring in a guy like Dalton Schultz who can help mitigate that by playing a big slot. And of course, you're talking about tight end, which is a massive need. And you're probably in a spot where it's draft 1 and sign/trade for 1. I'm thinking like a 5th round pick, something like that for him. I don't think it would be incredibly costly to acquire a tight end of this caliber with his contract that's attached. And I would be okay if it's Dalton Schultz and a rookie tight end taken. Hell, you could take Tyler Warren in the 1st round if you really want to, or in the 2nd, 3rd round, there should be a lot of solid tight end options to pair with him. The other tight end that I'm interested in is Michael Mayer, who is the tight end for the Raiders. They drafted him in the 2nd round of 2023, but then they drafted Brock Bowers last year. As we know, Bowers had an all-time rookie season, and Michael Mayer just had 21 catches for 156 yards. He's really cheap with a base salary of $1.6 million in 2025 and then up to $2 million in 2026. So 2 years remaining on his rookie deal. He's still just 24 years old, entering his 3rd season in the league at an absolute minimum. So I'm talking the floor here is that you get a quality blocker and someone who could be a tight end 2 upgrade for you than what you had a year ago with Jeremy Ruckert. But there's still some upside for him entering this season. He had like 300 something receiving yards in his rookie season. I would still obviously advocate for drafting a tight end, but we're likely talking, one of the 2 6th round picks thrown to the Raiders to land their tight end 2. And he would have the chance to be a starter if things go the way that they thought it was going out of the draft when he was a 2nd round pick not that long ago. But even again, worst case scenario, cheap tight end 2 that you could pair with a rookie this year. All right, to the defensive side of the ball, another position of need, interior defensive line. I'm looking at David Onyemata from the Falcons. He had 3 sacks a year ago. He's a strong run defender. That's his calling card. He has a low missed tackle rate for his career and just 8.9% a year ago. He had 25 run stops for Atlanta and has been consistently healthy throughout his career. I think that's important. He does have some overlap with Aaron Glenn when they both spent time with the New Orleans Saints. Glenn was obviously a defensive backs coach at that point. Not that he coached him positionally, but was a part of that defensive staff that had him and where he was obviously very productive. The Falcons would save $8 million, and the trading team that would be on the hook for acquiring him would just be a 1-year, $10 million deal. Now, the downside, he is 33 years old, but it's a massive need for the New York Jets to find a quality run stuffer on the interior. And I know that's not necessarily a sexy thing to talk about when team needs. There are other pressing needs that provide a little bit more excitement, like quarterback and wide receiver. Those are the premium positions that are going to get talked about a lot. But you're not going to have to. We would be talking about a late day 3 pick to fill a massive need, and putting Onyemata next to Quinnen Williams, I think, could be a home run. The last guy on my list is another Aaron Glenn guy. He was just with him in Detroit this past year. DJ Reader, interior defensive lineman for the Detroit Lions. You have the Lions connection that you have with Aaron Glenn. Another run-stuffing nose tackle. He's 31 years old, a little bit younger, 3 sacks a year ago, but that's not really his game. The 3 was a career high for him. His game is being a quality run stuffer, and at 6'3", 335 pounds, I think that would fit pretty nicely next to Quinnen Williams. The Jets probably need at least 2 interior defensive linemen this year, and if they're using, again, for both Reader and for Onyemata, I think we're talking, late, day 3 capital here. The Lions would free up some significant money if they moved off of him. They would free up $7.9 million in cap space. And he has a really palatable base salary for the team that's acquiring him at $6.7 million. I think Reader would be my preference over the other interior defensive lineman that we were just talking about. But again, I'm not saying that this is like some, oh my God, like this completely changes the trajectory of the New York Jets franchise for trading for really any of these guys just listed off. But the Jets have a lot of needs this offseason. And, sometimes you have to get creative. You can't only rely on free agency in the draft. Trades are important. I thought the Jets made, a good trade a year ago, acquiring Morgan Moses, at a really nice cost. They traded for Devontae Adams. That ends up likely only being for, half a season. But the Jets have used trades, going back, a long time now to improve their roster. Think of some of the best Jets seasons in I'm going to say recent, but it's 15 years ago now that we remember. The Jets trade, not a ton of draft capital to get Santonio Holmes in here. The Jets traded for Braylon Edwards a year prior. The Brandon Marshall trade, they didn't have to give up a ton to get him in here. There's been a lot of past history moves from the New York Jets. Jermaine Kearse, another one. I know he wasn't very good in 2018, but in 2017 he was actually relatively productive, and the Jets didn't give up a lot to get him. So that's the route that I think the Jets would go if they go the trade route. I don't think it would be, here's the 7th overall pick, Los Angeles, we're going to take on Matthew Stafford. Like, I don't see that happening. I don't see them giving up a ton for a wide receiver on the trade market. Like, What is DK Metcalf going to cost in a trade, or George Pickens? And like, would you have to pay DK Metcalf or George Pickens? Like, I know wide receiver is going to be a popular one that gets talked about a lot. I wasn't really able to find a great fit, but I think one of these 5 guys are a little bit more likely. They're at positions of need. They wouldn't cost you a whole lot in trade assets and against the cap. But I want to hear what you guys think about these potential options for the Jets. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you're new. I'll catch you next time.